Well, it's been a while, but it's time to do another News of the Week episode. And, the reason why I haven't been doing a lot of News of the Week episode like I've always do every single week is because there hasn't really been a lot of news that has happened in MLS that are something that I would always talk about in the News of the Week episode. I mean, as we're getting to the playoff push run for a lot of these teams that are still fighting for playoffs and also heading to the home stretch of the 2022 regular season, you're not going to get those transfer rumors or signings that you usually get maybe back in August and July. But that being said, we did had some transfer rumors that happened in MLS this week that is very interesting. But before we talk about that, we're going to once again talk about that incident that happened in that game between Inter Miami versus DC United. And that, if you didn't watch the review or didn't watch that game, so what happened here was that around the 59th minute, Taxi Fountas is alleged to said something racially toward Inter Miami defender Damion Lowe, and that seems like MLS is basically investigating the situation, whether or not indeed Taxi Fountas might have said the N-word toward Damion Lowe. Now, Taxi Fountas have openly stated that he did not say that word and it has denied all allegation. And that, as of now, it seems like there is no words or additional news in regards to that situation. But if there's more news in regards to this situation, I will definitely talk about it maybe in the next News of the Week episode. Or maybe even just do a single video to talk about this. Because, it is a very serious matter. And that, for Taxi Fountas, he's kind of really doubling down right now in terms of this situation. And I'm not saying that, he, of course, did it because it's still just allegation, and that allegation usually doesn't mean that he absolutely did it, but just judging by the way that he was immediately subbed off, and that there was even a report saying that the Inter Miami players were not going to continue the game unless if Taxi Fountas was subbed off in that one, which Wayne Rooney smartly was able to do exactly that. And by the way, Wayne Rooney, I've heard there's been multiple news sources saying that he actually did a great job in terms of taking care of that situation. He did the right thing in terms of subbing off his striker, and even had a word with Phil Neville in terms of talk about this situation. Remember, Wayne Rooney and Phil Neville, both of these guys are former Man U teammates, so it's understandable why they kind of had a kind of have a good discussion, and that as I said, he's been praised to handle this situation very, very well. But again, it's definitely a situation that we don't want to see in a soccer pitch. We have seen this incident multiple times around the world, and that let's just hope this is just nothing, and that for the sake of Taxi Fountas, he better hope the investigation will say that they couldn't find any evidence that he actually did use the word that I talked about earlier toward Damion Lowe, because it's one thing to basically being caught in terms of using racial slur towards someone, but it's another in terms of denying it, and that's even a more serious repercussion if that, of course, is the case. I mean, if that is the case, then most likely I think that is the last time we're going to see Taxi Fountas in a DC United or even in MLS, because when you of course get committed at this heinous crime, and only the fact that denying it in some sorts, you're not going to really find any team that is looking to try to sign you. Now, that being said, now talk about some of the transfer reports. And there was two interesting transfer report that was mentioned today. First of all, there was a report suggesting that Sergio Busquets wants to leave Barcelona this summer, and he's looking to join Inter Miami heading into next summer after he leaves Barcelona. Now, there has been a lot of report of Busquets potentially come to MLS, and he's kind of also one of those players that I mentioned before with a lot of players that's been rumored to come to MLS and have expressed their desire to come to MLS. Even though it looked like at first it was just kind of just one of those rumors, or one of the things that maybe these well-known players in Europe have said, but they never do it. It has happened recently. I mean, Gareth Bale for a long time have said that he wants his desire to come to MLS, and look where he's now. He's now with LAFC, even though I know he hasn't been doing that much. And that, for Inter Miami, I think as long as if they sign Sergio Busquets to just a TAM deal and don't make the same mistake that they made with Blaise Matuidi a couple of years ago, I think that this would be a good signing. I mean, Busquets, yes, he is kind of getting up to that age, and that it's getting to a point where, I'm pretty sure Inter Miami is not going to heavily rely on him in terms of being the main man in that midfield. And not to mention, Inter Miami is moving on in this situation where they're not going to be like that team where they thought that they can maybe link with everybody and maybe sign these well-known players to get butts in the seats. And that, yeah, not only the fact that they try to do that, but it has failed miserably in their face and kind of blow up in their face, and it's just get to a point where you're seeing that with the current group of players that they have. I think besides maybe Gonzalo Higuain, I don't think there's even a lot of Inter Miami players that actually play in that squad that came into the league in 2020. That just shows you how they really have dropped a nuke in their roster last offseason and have kind of just restarted and built this team from the ground up, and that they're also trying the different tactics where instead of just signing these age-old European player, they're actually going to sign some well-known talent, whether coming from the draft or coming down from South America, and hope it gel well. And so far, for the most part, it has done well, because I think this team, with the way that they're now above the red line in the playoffs, I think that is definitely considered a successful season. I mean, I know there's going to be some Inter Miami fans that may be a little bit delusional and say that this team should always be a playoff contender, but the season that they had coming in with all the sanctions that they've been dealing with and just building the team from the ground up, this has got to be considered a success of the way that I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs, and the fact that they're in the thick of it and maybe potentially is going to do so is going to be consider a good year. And also, not to mention, speaking of Phil Neville, I think that I do maybe owe Phil Neville an apologies, because I think many, including myself, have always criticized Phil Neville of not being good enough. But this season, he's proving those doubters wrong, and he's proven that he can definitely be a decent head coach in MLS. And although I don't think he's going to get enough votes of considered to be a coach of the year candidate, I think he's definitely going to be recognition as one of the head coach that has really proved all the doubters wrong and has guided this team to a position where they're looking to try to make it to the playoffs and actually make it to the proper playoffs, unlike what happened in their expansion year, where yes, they made it to the playoffs, but that was because of an expansion playoffs. This one would be more impressive with the way that they made it in the top 7 seed when nobody gave them a chance in the beginning of the season. Now, the Philadelphia Union is reported to sign Youth International and Louisville City center back Josh Winder. Now, this is a kid that I've heard about how he could be the next best thing for this U.S. men's national team, and he has done a very good job with Louisville during his time with the USL Championship. But there is definitely a hint that looks like this move might not happen, because the reason why we haven't seen a lot of MLS and USL Championship kind of move isn't just because of the fact that maybe MLS team don't rate USL Championship player, and that most of the time all those players from the USL Championship are just clearly not good enough to come to MLS. I mean, we have seen some that has worked out, but most of them, of course, haven't really quite worked out. But I think the other reason is because there's really is kind of a rivalry between MLS and USL Championship right now. I mean, before, I think there a couple of years ago, maybe there wasn't that kind of rivalry because of the way that there was a lot of MLS two teams that was in the USL Championship, but now with the way that a lot of these MLS 2 teams are in the MLS Next Pro, and also the fact that there's been a lot of bickering that's going on with existing USL Championship side with and MLS sides that's going on, whether it's all on and off the field situation. Yeah, there seems to be a little bit of a split between both of these leagues, kind of similar to a little bit of what we see in the Premier League and also in the English Championship and the EFL that is going on right now. So maybe that's also kind of the reason why a lot of these USL Championship teams don't want to sell some of their best known player to MLS and maybe get cheaped out because of it, and instead they want to also act like they're in MLS too and sell these talent off to Europe. And there could be a case that Josh Winder could go to Europe. I mean, there's been some clubs in Europe that is interest in terms of signing him, and again, he's a guy that I think in a couple of years we definitely will know his name, as he's definitely one of the pivotal pieces for that U.S. youth national team and that U19 team right now that the U.S. has. Now, speaking of the U.S. men's national team, our Mark McKenzie and Eric Palmer Brown will be replacing Chris Richer and Carter Vickers in the U.S. men's national team. So both Chris Richer and Cameron Carter Vickers unfortunately suffer a minor injury. But yeah, this gives a chance for Mark McKenzie and Eric Palmer Brown for their time to shine, and especially for Mark McKenzie case too. I mean, he's been kind of a forgotten man. This is the guy that people forgot that he was highly rated when he was doing his time with the Union, and then he made that big move to Europe and have now actually considered to be the most expensive defender in Belgium right now and have done very well. So I feel like it's a good chance that he can give another chance, and he could be also another candidate in the hat in terms of solving the problem in terms of the center back position for the U.S. men's national team. I mean, as I mentioned before, we know Walker Zimmerman will most likely be one of the starting center back for this U.S. men's national team, but who is he going to partner with? And that's assuming if Greg Berhalter is going to stick with the four at the back system. I think there's going to be two center back here, and obviously with Miles Robinson, unfortunately, won't be in this World Cup. There's that question: is it going to be Aaron Long? Is it going to be Chris Richer, or is it even going to be Mark McKenzie, Cameron Carter Vickers, or even in a slim chance Eric Palmer Brown gets a chance to be in that spot too? So yeah, this is a big opportunity for Mark McKenzie to prove himself, and so the same goes with Palmer Brown, though I think McKenzie maybe will get the better shot if there is a case where he could be in the discussion for that center back position for this U.S. men's national team. So yeah, it's good to see that both of these guys get a chance and see how they're going to do. But now moving on in terms of the next news, and a news that, we talked about this before, where, is U.S. Soccer going to punish Orlando City in any ways in terms of after they were caught after one of their staff members decided to observe the Sacramento Republic practice, and then there's the whole Spygate situation? Well, the answer is yes, but also it's not a lot. It's only a low figure that they decide to fine Orlando City. Now, obviously, I know there's a lot of people who are absolutely outraged by this, but I'm not a bit surprised by this because, again, all this situation, like the biggest thing I can think of is that maybe they'll fine Orlando City a big amount, or even the worst case scenario, they might strip Orlando City U.S. Open Cup title. But I just kind of feel like it wasn't going to be the case. And in an ideal world, I would say that maybe Orlando City might be in trouble in terms of having their U.S. Open Cup stripped because of the situation, but because of how U.S. Soccer has kind of operated, especially with MLS, how MLS team had kind of dominated this competition, and how it's when you look at this situation, I just had a feeling that U.S. Soccer was not going to put down the hammer, and more like just a slap of the wrist in terms of finding Orlando doing that. And not to mention, this actually happened. I heard that it seems like Sacramento was actually practice in a public park, and that when you practice in a public park, I mean, it's pretty easy for people to just kind of observe your practice. So that maybe has something to say with U.S. Soccer of why in the world did they actually let Sacramento just practice at a local park. I mean, it's not like Orlando doesn't have some good facility. Orlando literally have that facility called the Y World of Sports Complex, where that MLS's back tournament thing that happened back in 2020. Yeah, that happened there. So why not give them a chance to practice over there instead of playing practice in a public park? But either way, much as there's going to be outrage in terms of this, and that Sacramento, of course, gets screwed over by this. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're used to it. They've been screwed over so much lately because of it, and that I think this is just the latest thing that of them getting screwed over in ways, and that, again, we'll never know in terms of whether or not if that actually affect how the U.S. Open Cup final play. I mean, I guess in maybe a sarcastic way, you can say that it was pretty clear that Orlando City had some advantage, because they were scared of being that team to potentially get embarrassed by a USL Championship team and end up on the wrong end of history of being the first MLS team to lose to a lower division team since the Colorado Rapids did it back in 1999 over Rochester Rhinos. But yeah, again, like I said, as much as people are kind of outraged by this decision, I don't think there should be a lot a surprise by it. Now, moving on in terms of the next news, Chicharito and Carlos Vela will not be part of the Mexican national team in the World Cup. Now, this is not a big surprise because both of these guys have been frozen out of the Mexican national team, especially with Carlos Vela, and his relationship with El Tri has been just so far apart that it's very clear that he has no chance of ever returning with El Tri. But there was a case that Chicharito can still do so, and that I've heard a lot of El Tri fans that demand Tata Martino to give Chicharito a shot, because after all, he is the leading all-time goal scorer for this El Tri side. So why in the world did they decide to not give him a chance? And not to mention, Chicharito is still doing relatively well in MLS and still banging goals, and that, no, they definitely need another player like that alongside with Raul Jimenez in that number 9 position. But no, it seems like that's not going to be the case, and that, at least for the Galaxy, I think this is good news. The fact that Chicharito won't be in the World Cup or even in the Mexican camp. I don't think he was part of the September roster, but it's good news with the way that they do have that big Cali Clasico match against the Quakes on September 24th, and that they definitely want to be at full strength, because that is a game that I mentioned before. When you look at the remaining schedule that the Galaxy has had, these next 3 games will really determine the Galaxy season, because after when they play the Quakes at the Cali Clasico at Stanford, which has been a house of horror for them, they have to play against RSL in a game that you could say that could really decide who is going to make the playoffs and who is going to be missing out. So that's got to be good news for the Galaxy. They won't lose their Talus number 9 in that game because of this recent news. But again, I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that it seems like again, Tata Martino clearly do not trust Carlos Vela and Chicharito, and both of these guys have just kind of really burned the bridges with El Tri, and therefore they're not in the Mexican national team. Now, Jesus Ferreira has named number 1 in the MLS Annual 22 Under 22 list. And by the way, I probably should have created my own MLS Annual 22 Under 22 list, because it's been a list that have always looked at some of the most talented young players in this league. And knowing the fact that MLS is definitely a league that wants to develop young talent, the 22 Under 22 list is definitely one of the more interesting lists to look at. But this year, it's Jesus Ferreira, of course, getting the number 1 spot, and rightfully so. I mean, it's not even close in terms of the fact that he is the best player in this league that is under 22. He's basically been a goal scoring machine for FC Dallas, and a guy that I'm assuming he's going to be the number 9 for this U.S. men's national team, and kind of end that discussion of who exactly is going to be that number 9 that can score the goals for this U.S. men's national team heading into the World Cup. Now, Karol Świderski, of course, winning player of the week, and I think this is the first time that Świderski has won the player of the week since the beginning of the season, and rightfully so. I mean, he, of course, scored 2 goals and probably should have had a hat trick in that game, because as I mentioned in the review between that game between Chicago and Charlotte should have at least got one back early in the second half, when a goal that was clearly shouldn't be disallowed just because a player was injured on the ground according to VAR. But still, congratulations to Karol Świderski of a season that it's been a very underwhelming season for him. He's definitely not lived up to the DP tag, but at least occasionally he has had some of these good performances, and this was definitely one of them when he played against the Chicago Fire. And then lastly, Garth Lagerwey win the World Best Football Executive Award at the World Football Summit. Now, obviously, I know this doesn't sound very big, because the World Football Summit is kind of like your typical average Joe kind of football or soccer awards that award some of the best known player around the world or some of the best known executive. But it's still big, because Garth Lagerwey, there was definitely some lists on there that could have won that list, but as I said, Garth Lagerwey getting the award, and rightfully so, with the way that he is by far the best GM in MLS, and it hasn't even been close for the past couple of years. He has really built the Seattle Sounders team to a team that has not only been a MLS Cup winning team multiple times and compete for the MLS Cup for pretty much ever since he came in, but also finally getting an MLS team to win CCL and conquer that CONCACAF Champions League mountain. So rightfully deserve to win this award, even though I know some Sounders fans maybe are saying that Garth Lagerwey is not doing a good job because of what happened this season, and that the Sounders are really kind of having their worst season so far as we coming down the stretch, and maybe will for the very first time miss the playoffs in their franchise history, but still, I think what he has done for the Sounders team, and especially, even if the Sounders does miss the playoffs, at least I think some Sounders fan will not be as disappointed as it before, because at least they won a trophy, and that trophy is the CONCACAF Champions League trophy, something that no other MLS team has ever done, and that they finally silenced the naysayer that no MLS team will ever be able to close or come within the gaps of Liga MX, because they still have not shown that they can win the CONCACAF Champions League and beat a Liga MX team in a CONCACAF Champions League final game. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for my looks at all the news of the weeks that has happened in this past week. As always, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of all these news, and if there's any news that I didn't mention here on the board, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.